Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Hellbent, chapters 29, 30, 31, and 32. In these chapters, y'all, shit is popping off. Things have followed them back from hell, which I know has been mentioned as a possibility, but honestly, there's been so much shit going wrong, I forgot about the other shit that could potentially go wrong. Caught off guard by this, my friends. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Joanna for commissioning this episode. What's up, Joanna? This section, I'm sorry if you guys can hear this weird clicking. My desk is like making this odd sound whenever I lean forward. And you know, I lean on my desk. That's part of what desks are for. But this section, it really shouldn't have come as much of a surprise as it did. They have talked about how things can follow you back, how the way that things ended so unceremoniously because of the interruption, it should have entered my mind that they didn't get a chance to wrap things up in a way that they ordinarily would have. And thus, probably, it wasn't entirely finished or safe. But I got so distracted by the fact that they had this confrontation where they get fucking kicked out of Lethe that it effectively robbed my brain of the memory of the other dangers. And that is really saying something, because I am somebody who tends to hold on to that kind of anxiety like hard. So the fact that I was aware this was a possibility, and yet she wrote such an effective distraction that really speaks to like the quality of writing we've got going on here, because there are plenty of writers out there who will mention a thing and then sort of try and like distract you from that and then drop it on you. And I have had that happen before where I'm like, I can tell that you want me to not think about this, but it's the only thing I'm thinking about because that was a really upsetting potential possibility, you know? So anyway, what I'm saying is this whole thing with when Helly shows up was so upsetting. Like, obviously some shit was going real wrong. You know, it's not what it looks like. Alex even knows that it's not really what it looks like. And yet, because it is like kind of her heart's desire, she can't help but go with it, because it's just sort of like this second chance is all she's ever really wanted, and she doesn't want to risk potentially squandering the opportunity to make right something that has haunted her for, at this point, a year and a half, and will continue to haunt her for the rest of her life, obviously. So, excuse me. I'm going to start it off. 29 starts with the morning after the, interrupted ritual, and she is really cold. She's having trouble getting warm, and Mercy, who has been doing some research, mentions that it is a result of being in contact with hellfire, which is kind of a neat idea. I feel like some people might be like, oh, well, you after you come back from hell, you're hot all the time. But like, instead, it's almost as if the heat of it has caused your tolerance for heat to go way up. And so nothing will get you warm except for something of that intensity again. And it turns out that she slept through all of Sunday. She has slept 36 hours. I don't think I've ever slept that long. I don't think I've ever slept, like, I'm trying to think of even after, like, pretty intense and difficult physical things and traumatic things never happened. So that's pretty intense. So yeah, where is it that she says something? Oh yeah, soup made from scratch and Bible verses were both suggested, which I have to assume that the Bible verses thing is not like, I won't say it won't work, but my issue is that we had fucking Turner quoting the Bible literally in hell, and they just quoted it back at him. So I haven't got a lot of faith in the concept of using the Bible as a defense against anything at that point, you know, like, and it's not like Turner isn't a believer. He wasn't just somebody quoting shit for the sake of it because he thought it was like worth a try. He felt like somebody who was really certain what he was saying was going to have an effect. And, you know, granted, the wolves didn't just like go on and attack them anyway. Maybe it did do something, very slight something, but the fact that they could quote it back, it just seems to me like maybe that's not as effective as you want it to be. So anyway, she is eating and talking to Mercy, kind of trying not to think very much about the fact that she got kicked out of Lethe and maybe will be getting kicked out of Yale as well. And Mercy basically is like, so are you going to go back? Are you going to do it again? Like, what's stopping us? And Alex has to admit, there's nothing really stopping us. Like, we could just go ahead and do it again. We wouldn't have a night like Halloween, which is really helpful, but probably we could make it happen. It's just at this point, you know, like, my issue is and remains, if they don't have access to some of the things that come with being of Lethe, how much more dangerous it may be for them to do. Like the salt armor, for example, that Mercy was using. Is this like, can they find something that is as effective? Or is it going to be riskier for Mercy because they have to do some weird janky version of that? And I say this with the acknowledgement that by the end of this section, we haven't seen, I can't remember his name now, but the guy who kicked them out, Anselm, I think that was his name. He hasn't shown up again, and she has an appointment to go see the Praetor, and there's a weirdness about the fact that he's still calling her Virgil, which she finds sort of puzzling. And then Anselm, it seems, hasn't told this guy anything. So I'm starting to wonder if she's actually kicked out of Lethe for real, or if Anselm intended for her to be, and then something happened to him and he didn't get a chance to actually like officially do that, you know? Also the fact that they're able to get into Ilbeth Stone, like, I'm not sure if he just trusted that they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't go back to Ilbeth Stone, or if there is some sort of like official barring of people who have been removed from a society. So I'm just honestly, as much as I completely understand Alex holding on to Yale and Lethe because of this sense of like, I'm finally feeling like I am somewhere stable and things are beautiful and everything could turn around for me utterly. And I do want that for her. Right now, her future isn't exactly my priority. All I am worried about is whether she's going to make it through what she's trying to do with getting Darlington back. That's my number one feeling of like, girl, I get that you want to turn your life around, but you need your life to turn around. And I am not sure that you're going to have it. So why don't we just not put the cart before the horse? And, you know, to be honest, what I feel was holding Alex back so badly was the crowd she was with and her drug use and her inability to handle Grays. She is now no longer using, she's using the Basso Belladonna. I'll say this. She is using that, taking the edge off, as they say. But she uses that, and she otherwise hasn't been like even really drinking, as Darlington mentioned in the last book. And she isn't hanging out with those people anymore. She's surrounded by people who, while she might not be around them in the same way were she not a student, I think still care about her enough that they would like be in her life if she left the school. And she has more tools and knowledge for dealing with grays, and also is learning different ways in which she can use grays herself in advantageous ways. So I get her wanting to hold on to this. I do not begrudge her that. I think she should try and hold on to it. However, I don't feel a sense of hopelessness for her if she were to like lose her position at the school the way that I would if she, say, decided to like use drugs. You know, that would feel a lot more like, oh boy, this is going in a direction I don't want for you, you know? So let's see. Yeah. Mercy says something about how like, that was great. I'm pretty sure I saw William Chester Minor. I thought it would be a lot tougher. And, I was just kind of like, I don't love the fact that it went so easily for Mercy this time. Like, I don't want hardship for her, but it feels like after building up all the things that could go wrong and her not really experiencing firsthand any of the potential like negative consequences, that she may start to treat things too casually. That said, she can see the demons that come after them. So at least she has like a connection to that. You know, it's not really like they're targeting her the same way, but because she was involved, I have to assume that even though there's no demon targeting her specifically, that once they finish off her friends, they would still kind of come for her. You know, that's my assumption. And I may be wrong about that. But anyway, so she, texts the group chat, and there's a mention from Dawes that if anybody has a kitchen, she can make soup, which she thinks will help. And we have a really great thing with Dawes later that I am super excited about, but we will get there when we get there. So she sees Michelle Alameddine in the crowd when she is you know, gets ready to go to classes with Mercy, even though a part of her kind of wants to skip, but mostly she wants to hang on to things as much as she can. So she sees Michelle in the crowd, and Michelle says, "How are you holding up?" in a way that feels as if like this was the point of her coming. And it's also what she says to Alex, like, "I'm here to check on you and make sure you're okay." And I don't trust this at all. This whole thing, Alex says, "How was your dinner with your boyfriend's parents?" And she says, "I've met them before. It's fine. As long as we avoid talking politics, they're great." And Alex finally is like, "I know that you didn't go back. You said that, but you didn't leave until the next morning." And Michelle like blushes, but she gets kind of aggressive the way that defensive people do when they know they're doing something fucked up. And instead of like letting themselves be put on the back foot so that they are saying something defensive, they counterattack. How is that any of your business? "I'm seeing someone here, and I try to come to town a few times a month. My boyfriend is fine with it, and even if he weren't, I don't deserve to be interrogated. I was worried about you." And I really appreciate this. Alex is sort of like, I know that her, I was worried about you, is supposed to make me stop and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But Alex is like not playing that game. And I really, really appreciate that, because I get very tired of characters who fall for that sort of thing. I'm covering the Sookie Stackhouse novels with Miles, and Sookie is a really smart character in a lot of ways. Like, she figures things out quickly and comes up with solutions in the moment really well and uses logic to, you know, but then there are times where it's not even like an intelligence thing. It is that she tolerates shit from people and plays their games in a way that is like really concerned with being polite and maintaining the peace on the surface in a way that I just find extremely tiresome and ineffective. Like in the long run, I don't think it's a good way to handle things. I think it seems like it has held things over in the moment, but you're going to have to come back and deal with what's going on under the surface eventually. So you're just putting it off. And I was just really excited to be in Alex's world right now, so that like that moment, if it were Sookie, she would have been like, well, I really appreciate it. I'm sorry. And Alex is like, no. You're willing to come here and check on me, but you're not going to actually help Darlington. You didn't need to go with us. All we needed was your experience and your knowledge. And Michelle, surprised to hear that they made the descent at all. And Alex is like, I don't really get it. If she doesn't know we made the descent, why is she here? Is she really just worried about me in a general way? Like, that doesn't really feel right to me. And finally, when Alex presses again and is just like, what are you doing here? Like, what's the deal? Michelle is just, oh, you're not a detective. Go to class and stay out of my personal life. I won't waste my time on you again. And Alex was tempted to follow her, but she goes to her class, and I was like kind of regretting that. I sort of wanted Alex to follow Michelle. I don't know I have no real theory on what's going on with her. We find out later that she has never worked for the library that she claimed to work for, which is really interesting. I am, once again, no real theories on that. So, her claims about seeing someone here, I'm like, I don't buy it. There is just something about her that feels to me like she's being used by somebody. However, I don't really see her pressing Alex for anything. She's not asking for information. She's not like even really trying that hard to make contact with her in a real way. So I don't know what it could be. I don't know, but there's fucking something up over here. I don't think she's the murderer. That's a question that Alex sort of has. Even Alex doesn't really seem to think it, but she might be. I can't discount that. So anyway, she goes to class, and she texts Turner about the fact that she ran into Michelle. And he tells her she doesn't work at the Butler. Since when? She never did. And she's like just thinking this over and totally distracted from the lecture. And then all of a sudden, here it is. Beneath the soaring ceiling, the brass chandeliers floating weightlessly above, surrounded by panels of tawny wood and that Tiffany window that had no business in a classroom. And she looks over, and there is somebody sitting underneath that window. Alex had to ignore the twinge she felt at the gleam of her golden hair and honey skin. She looked like Helly, and no one had a tan like that before winter break. In fact, she looked exactly like Helly. The girl was staring at her, blue eyes sad. She was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. Alex's heart was suddenly racing. So she's like, all right, what the fuck? And it's very clear this isn't a Gray. And she asks Mercy, like, do you see her? And Mercy says, yeah, why is she looking at you? And I'm really curious whether or not other people can see these demons as well, or if Mercy can see as well as the other four only because she was involved in the ritual. I'm going to assume that everybody can see them, because everybody can see, what's his name? Linus. So I have to say that's probably the case, but he also sort of is actively feeding and like consumed somebody, is the theory, in a way that this one hasn't yet. So I'm not sure if they have the same like properties to them. So the girl looks at her, gets up, and walks out. And Alex is like, I shouldn't go, but I've got to go. And I'm like, God damn it, because I get it. You know, there are times where somebody's like, I have to know. And I'm like, you are an idiot. I can't believe you are falling for this. But this situation was so bizarre that I really couldn't blame Alex, because what with magic being real and not having seen Helly on like as a gray beyond the episode at Ground Zero, like not knowing where she is and what she's doing, I just had been sort of wondering what was going on with her. So I thought maybe something has happened that has allowed her to take a more corporeal form for a moment. Or even it had occurred to me that Helly had a sibling that knew who Alex was and looked a lot like her and had come to like track Alex down and be like, I want to know what happened that night, you know? I don't remember if it's mentioned if Helly is an only child or not. It might have said that she was, but you know, that was the only other thing that really could have accounted, was like somebody who looks so much like her, but isn't her. And she asks when she comes out, what are you? And Helly says, I don't know. And there is this little boy, Gray, who is sitting there whimpering, looking at her. And it's just another warning. Shit is not what it looks like. But again, Alex can't really resist. So then Helly says, shit, Alex, what are you waiting for? And Alex runs up to her, hugs her, buries her face in her hair, and she smells right. She smells like she did when she was alive. What if this wasn't a punishment or a trial? What if for once luck was running in her direction instead of away? What if this was her prize for so much hurt? What if this time magic had worked the way it was supposed to, the way it did in stories? And there's a moment a little bit later where Alex isn't sure why her demon was able to touch and physically attack her when the others, they only spoke to them in disparaging ways, but they didn't actually touch them. And I am thinking that it's because Alex initiated the contact here. They don't have the relationship with their demon impersonator that Alex has with Helly. It's a really interesting sort of situation, actually, in that regard, because everybody else is being haunted by a demon who has taken on the appearance of their victim. You know, every one of them is a murderer, and the person they murdered is the person whose face the demon is wearing. But in Alex's case, it's not the people that she killed. It's Helly, who died because of other circumstances. And it is such a weird thing because they have like a little chat that feels like almost normal in this way, and her talking about like, I need something to take the edge off, and Alex agreeing to like help her find something. And then all of a sudden she says, Len misses you. You should give him another chance. And I'm like, what's going on? You should have come for me. You should have helped me. You couldn't protect me before. Len can help us. He can watch out for us. We can't do this alone. And I was like, is she trying to lure her somewhere? Like back to her old life, but on the other side of the veil? Like, the other side of the veil, obviously, there's a lot we don't know about how shit works. And I'm like, is it possible to wind up in the same awful patterns there that you were in life? Like, that just seems really rude, but magic in this world is really fucking awful a lot. So maybe. And she says, we have to stay here. We have to wait for Len. And I'm just like, what's that gonna even look like? Like, what? So let's see, here it is. Right. So here's this weird moment Tell me what to do to make it right, Alex said. Tell me what to say. Helly cupped her cheek. Her thumb brushed Alex's lower lip. You know that mouth is only good for one thing, Alex, and talking isn't it. Alex recoiled. Helly didn't talk that way. Len did. And I'm just like, wait, okay, so is this Len pretending to, like, I thought maybe it was him as a gray, but he had somehow figured out how to look like Helly. He was good to us. He took care of us. He was all we had, and you killed him. You let me die, not Len. Helly was right. If she'd just woken up when Helly came in that night, if she'd made it home sooner, if she hadn't fallen asleep in the theater in the first place, if she'd told Len no, they were done, if she'd kept them in Vegas, they could be there right now, staring at all the pretty glass and at that big hotel. And I'm just like, girl, she literally tricked you into falling asleep so that she could bail on you and ditch you. Like, the fact that she is blaming herself for Helly's death is deeply understandable in some ways. But when it comes down to it, it is all down to the fact that Helly didn't want to be homeless and had decided she was willing to put up with what she needed to for the one night. That's what it was, you know? So, oh my God, you guys, this is so horrible. I choked on my own vomit lying next to you, but you blamed Len for that? I let Ariel fuck me. He put some kind of electric prod inside me. He thought it was funny the way I jumped when he fucked my ass, which is like so much worse than what I was even thinking. Honestly, like truly, that is so fucking horrifying. I did it for us. I made the sacrifices, but here you are with your new friends and your new clothes pretending you loved me. And again, this wasn't for Alex. Like, Helly did this to preserve herself. And it was probably going to result in Alex being off the hook if Helly did this, but I in no way saw Helly ditching Alex and going back and deciding to like participate in what Len had planned for them. I never saw that as her sacrificing for Alex's sake at all. It was her calculation about what she thought she needed to do in order to keep things the way they were for the time being. And finally, Alex, like, there's a couple of salt pearls still on the necklace, and she uses them to defend herself, and it does work. There's only two, but they manage to, like, one of them she bashes Helly in the face with, and it, like, basically sort of sizzles. She slammed the pearl into the demon's forehead, feeling it explode beneath her palm. It was as if the thing's skull gave way, crumpling like wet sand, dissolving into a bloody crater. The demon shrieked, its skin hissing and bubbling. And everything that she said in the midst of this, like, because they're tussling, and Helly is telling her, it should have been me. I was the one who was meant to bounce back. I was supposed to leave you behind. And Alex is thinking, no, you're right. Everything, like, I don't belong in this world. And the sense she's got is like, maybe this is what I deserve, actually. Maybe after everything that I've done, somehow letting Helly kill me is like evening the score. Me, like, it's sort of almost like restoring the universe to the way it's supposed to be. Like, the fact that she is here at Yale of all places is such an absurdity and an aberration that she has to, like, justify that, you know? It's just, I really feel for her though, because there are times where I think we all have this. It's like imposter syndrome, but to a degree that's about your actual existence as a person. So she escapes. She calls Alice, And she calls Mercy. Don't open the door to anyone who shouldn't be alive. And she hangs up and she heads to Ilbestone, and she calls Dawes on the way and says, all right, are you with Trip? You need to get to Ilbestone. I don't care that we're not allowed. Just go. I brought something back with me. And she's got the gray inside her still. She pulled the like little boy in, and this thing still sort of overpowered her. It didn't seem to help that much. So she's approaching Ilbestone and not sure if it's going to let her in. It does. The little boy is like yanked out of her body because he left in a sulky rush, taking his strength with him. The door slammed behind her hard enough that the windows shook. And she can see that one of them is outside, this demon that is pretending to be Helly. She doesn't notice quite yet that its appearance is beginning to change. But she texts Dawes, says, there's a blonde outside of Ilbestone, looks like a girl, is not a girl, use salt. And yeah, Dawes and Turner have come prepared, and Trip, and they are hurling fistfuls of salt at it. And I love it. Its flesh is like bubbling up. I really want to know how long exactly it takes. Like, we don't, the salt is a temporary thing. In other words, they can throw it at them and it causes them to break basically and almost seem to melt, but they do seem to snap back pretty fucking quick after. So I don't, and yeah, Blake Keeley was with her, his head whole and perfect and wedding cake handsome. A middle-aged man in a cheap-looking suit was there, too, arms crossed, rocked back on his heels as if he'd seen it all and wasn't impressed, along with a tall, rangy guy who couldn't have been more than 25. And Dawes said, we didn't close the door. We didn't complete the ritual. We have to go back. So Dawes makes some chicken soup. I love this, guys. We're not there yet, but I'm very excited about it. And they sit down to read and try and figure out their situation and what could be done about what's going on. There's a mention of Turner kind of looking, for once, rumpled and shitty in a way that he almost never does. I do appreciate too the mentions about like his attention to clothing and that he can tell designer labels and stuff when we're inside his memory so that he can see when Carmichael's wives, or I guess he only had the one, but his wife has got designer bags and Turner can tell they're real. So there's something about that like extra detail and him saying women he dated appreciated that he could speak that language. I just love that. It's not something that matters to me. I'm not into I like clothing in a general way, but I am not like into fashion, and I am certainly not into designer stuff. I can't afford it, and a lot of the time I don't really care for it anyway. But I don't know, just a little bit of characterization that I liked and I had meant to mention. So let's see, here it is. These demons aren't trying to make us feel greed, are they? Hopelessness, said Alex. They want us to feel hopeless. I thought Helly was a blonde, Dawes said. She is, said Alex. Was. And they go and look and they realize all of them, every demon is starting to look a little bit more like the person that they are haunting. And all of a sudden, she's like, wait a second, and is thinking about Linus Reader, the vampire. I love the way she just drops this. Who? Asked Trip. He's a vampire I tangled without an old Greenwich. And I'm just like, how are you just going to drop that here? Linus was a student at Yale, but he had a different name then. He was a bonesman. And I think he's one of the people who used that gauntlet. I think Linus, or really Lionel Reader, went to hell. And let's see. Why build it if they didn't intend to use it? Why kill off an architect? They killed an architect? No one killed Bertram Goodhue, Dawes snapped. Then she bit her lip. At least, I don't think anyone killed Bertram Goodhue. I'm going to be honest, guys. I don't remember the discussion about the architect. So I'm assuming that there had to be like a sacrifice in order to create the gauntlet, and they're thinking that the architect was the sacrifice. Killing two birds with one stone, kind of, because the architect can't know what they are trying to do here, and they needed a human life. But I'm like, that's a bunch of assumption on my part. I do not remember what's been talked about with Bertram. And Alex said they built this insane puzzle into a giant cathedral. Why? Just to see if they could? They've done crazier shit, said Turner. And she's like, I mean, I guess so. But she just doesn't buy it. And finally is like, all right, I think he went and he accidentally brought a demon back and it got the best of him and stole his life. And Dawes says, well, there is a theory that vampires are basically demons. Reader fed on misery. Blood was just the vehicle. And of course he wasn't Reader at all. He was a demon who had fed on the real Reader until he walked like him, spoke like him, looked like him, just like the demons down on the sidewalk. And that is a really upsetting image. It's bad enough to be haunted by something that looks like a person deeply associated with guilt that can never really be overcome or let go of. But for that then to start turning into a copy of you is just such an extra layer of creepiness, of symbolism, it's just, it's taking you over in like this literal way. And let's see, they're going to eat the heart out of us, Tripp rasped. He said, hey, he's not Spencer. He is. Spencer was just like that. He always knew the meanest thing to say. And Alex has a moment of like, she wants to be a little irritated with Tripp here. But then she has this like, you know what though? The two of us, in a lot of ways, suffered similar things with not being believed and dismissed, and she's like, they are trying to make you helpless. And Tripp's like, well, it worked. I don't know what to tell you, basically. This is when she realizes that nobody else had physical contact with theirs. And I love her question of just like, maybe it's just me? Like, things tend to just be worse for me in general. Is that what is going on here? There's also the potential that it's because she's a wheel walker. And somehow that makes her like more of there's like more of a connection between her and like the magical world that makes it easier for things that are not of this realm to have contact with her. But I don't know. So Dawes makes the soup. Everybody eats. And everybody is just like, man, that really did work. I do feel better. And Tripp is saying, shit, Dawes, can you please just come stay in my loft and make me fat? I do really enjoy Tripp. He's like, it's so hard to hate him. He's a part of like this whole system and structure that is garbage and toxic. But he as a person is truly so unaware of that. And genuinely, I think, would be upset if he understood. I think that he seems like the kind of guy who cares enough. It's just getting him to sit still long enough to explain things and have him actually believe it. I don't know. He's somewhat credulous. I feel like Tripp is convertible potentially to somebody who does good, but somebody needs to feel like he's worth the trouble. So there is this really cool protection spell that Mercy has found. It needed only ingredients from Lethe's stores, and they each get a list and put all of this stuff together. And a slew of herbs of protection: sage, vervain, mint, ground amethyst, black tourmaline, crow feathers bound with rosemary, dried jackdaw eyes that struck the base of the crucible with a clatter like pebbles. So then they have to stir it in a rhythm and keep it up. And they all have to take turns because it takes a really long time. At one point when Turner is like, how long do we do this? She says something about how until the mixture quickens. And they have to spit into it. We need enough saliva to dissolve the salt. And Mercy says, this is disgusting. And I'm just like, Mercy, no offense, girl, but you have seen absolutely nothing of what can be disgusting in this universe. Hang on to your hat. So finally it starts to like hiss and glow. And here's the moment. Her hair, let's see, the mixture sparked and hissed, the glow lighting Daw's determined face. Her hair had come down from her bun and spread over her shoulders in damp red coils. Sweat gleamed on her pale brow. Fuck me, Alex thought. Dawes is a witch. She worked magic with her potions and brews and healing ointments, with her soups made from scratch, her plastic containers of broth in the fridge just waiting to be needed. How many times had she healed Alex and Darlington with cups of tea and tiny sandwiches, with bowls of soup and jars of preserves? Y'all, I am so on board for this concept of Dawes being a witch. Like, I just absolutely adore this. I'm surprised that it hadn't occurred to me sooner, to be honest. Her whole thing with like needing to cook compulsively as well. It's just, God, I can be this person, but I also really miss like having anybody like this around me, because, you know, now that I'm at a point where I'm the one who has to do it all the time, it's lost some of its excitement. But I just really liked this moment, and good for you, Dawes. So there's this pop, an explosion of like smoke, and then there's just powder at the bottom, and they think at first that it didn't work. And then Alex is like, wait a second, and she reaches down into the thing and she pulls out this talisman, and it looks like a snake, and it comes alive, slides up her elbow, and then vanishes into her skin. And this is a protective creature that is like part of her now, this guardian spell. So then Trip grabs one, and he gets an albatross. And I'm really, because, you know, they talk about, there's the whole thing with like albatrosses being these sort of sacred birds to sailors. So I'm thinking it's connected with that, but I don't know in terms of, there's a point where Mercy says, they're amazing birds. They can lock their wings in place and sleep while they fly. And I did not know that, but Trip is very delighted. And I'm sort of like, somebody who likes to coast. Yeah, that feels right. I don't know though, if there's more to that. So then Dawes has one. And I was thinking it might be like a mouse. It turns out it's a slow loris, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen a slow loris, but they are really fucking adorable. They are so cute. And there is a moment here where Turner is like, what is that supposed to do? Kill him with cuteness? And Mercy says, they can be deadly. They're the only primates with a poisonous bite. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you meant venomous there, right? Like, that's a weird mistake for Mercy to make out of everybody. But yeah, slow loris, like the videos that I have seen of them were ones that were like domesticated to be somebody's pet. And apparently because of the venomous bite, they have to have like these particular teeth removed to make them safe. And it's kind of like a fucked up thing to do. So you don't want one as a pet. They're also like apparently really, they mark their territory with urine that like reeks horrifically, but they are very, very cute. So then Turner reaches in and he pulls out a tree. And Trip thinks this is hilarious. He's like, how the fuck did I get a plant? The spell indicated the guardians would come from the living world. An oak is alive, Trip giggled, doubling over. You can acorn your enemies into submission. Turner scowled. This is some... The oak sprang alive in his palm, shooting toward the ceiling, spreading in a vast canopy of white salt branches, its roots exploding over the floor and knocking Trip to the ground. They wrapped around Turner and sank into his skin. For a moment, it was impossible to tell the tree from the man. Then the glimmering branches evaporated. That is the dopest thing. Like, how cool is that? There is a video game that I played that the trees, there were like tree characters that you could put in your army that attacked, and their roots would grow outward and just decimate these troops from your opposing side. And it was like a really fun, cool looking effect. And that was what I sort of imagined here, and that they like targeted Trip just to be like, shut the fuck up, dude. And it just suits Turner, you know. There is something about him that is like implacable and just so steady. So then Mercy gets one. A horse with wings. It circled the room, growing larger and larger, its hooves shaking the ground. It leapt directly at Mercy, who screamed and threw up her hands in defense. The horse vanished into her chest, and for a moment 2 massive wings seemed to extend from Mercy's back. She murmured a word Alex didn't understand. She was beaming. So, yeah. Don't like, I'm thinking Pegasus, but that's a word I'm sure Alex would understand, so I don't know what she had said. And then at the bottom is a cat. And it is definitely Cosmo. Which Alex is starting to be like, yeah, I think that was the same fucking cat from when I was in his grandfather's memory. That cat is not a normal cat. Something weird's going on with that cat. So, if you're under threat, lick your wrist or hand or, I guess, anywhere you can reach. Gross, said Mercy. Dawes pursed her lips. The alternate spell requires I remove someone's tibia to stir the pot. No, thank you, said Turner. I can make it fairly painless. No, thank you. And Alex is sort of like comforted by the fact that here's some magic that seems to actually be pretty and cool for a good thing. And she's trying to like cling to this a little bit. So they're talking about when the next time is that they can try going back, probably at the full moon, but it's going to be harder this time, Dawes says, because we don't have like Halloween. And Alex says, I think it's going to swing wide open because something is going to be pushing on it, trying to get through. The tough part is going to be closing it again, which I think that makes sense, but I also really don't care for that. That's just ominous, man. That is a real ominous situation. So they're talking about like, because Trip is like, I just don't know if I can do it all over again. And Mercy says, you don't have a choice. Her voice was harsh and Trip looked like he'd been slapped. But Alex finally understood why Mercy disliked Trip so intensely. He was too much like Blake. He wasn't a predator. His only cruelty was the casual kind, the blade of having more than everyone else and not quite knowing that was a weapon in his hands. But on the surface, he was cut from the same smug cloth. And I was thinking that it was more like she thought Trip was Blake's friend and didn't stop him and stuff. But apparently it's just a general sense of like him being similar. And honestly, I'm not mad at that. So this is when they get interrupted because they smell smoke and the fucking demons have started to started a blaze on the entrance of Ilbestone to try and smoke them out of the house, which I am just genuinely surprised that they're able to get close enough to start this fire, because I thought that the protections on Ilbestone would have been such that they couldn't approach and get close enough to do this. But I guess they can basically do everything short of actually touching the walls of the building. Like, so coming up and like putting the accelerant and whatnot is no problem. Turner calls the fire department, and Alex is heading out, and Turner is like, what are you doing? This is what they want. But Alex is like, you know what? Let's go. And she faces Helly. And I love this moment so much. It's really neat. Alex saw her own shadow had shifted as if she'd grown 100 arms. Not arms. Snakes. They hissed and snapped around her, lunging at the demons, which cowered away from her. And let's see, the serpents wavered as if they sensed her hesitancy. Then Alex breathed in and coughed. Last call, you're going back where you came from. This is my life. You're the imposter. This isn't your life, and you are trespassing. One of the snakes lunged forward, its bite so fast Alex didn't see more than a blur, and then the demon recoiled, clutching its smoking cheek. You can't banish us that easily. She looked almost like Len now, hair straggly, forehead pocked by acne. We know you. We know your smell. You are nothing but a stepping stone. Which, what does that mean? Like, that I felt like deserved more. Like, Alex just responds, maybe. But right now I'm the bouncer and you better run. And do they just mean like a stepping stone to living in the regular world? And why would they want to? I don't know, but that's what they want, apparently. So finally, she and the others like basically bail while Turner is handling the questions from the fire department. There's a thought that maybe they should stay, and that they get a signal from Turner that's basically like a head shake indicating, no, you should get out of here. And Alex is still not totally trusting Turner and sort of wonders if he's having them go so that he can cover his own ass, which I was just like, I don't know, Alex. I don't feel like you know Turner that well if you think that's what's happening here, because you all have come too far together. He doesn't seem like the type that would pull that sort of thing at this point in the proceedings. So yeah, they take off, and there's a moment where she like puts a hand on the wall of the house and says, thinks to herself, this is my home and nothing will take it from me. And I really hope that's true. I'm hoping that something's going to happen where Ilbestone like only answers to Alex, and when the Praetor or Anselm shows up, the house is just like, sorry, I don't know you. So then we go to the final chapter, 32. And they agree that they're going to meet up tomorrow. They trip off at his like apartment, which is actually quite nice. Turner says that he is going to go to Black Elm and just check on Darlington and try and talk to him and see if maybe he knows anything. Obviously, he's talking in riddles, but it seems like Turner is sort of aware that he's going to have to decipher whatever Darlington says to him. And then, let's see, they go in, and it's her and Mercy walking in, and Lauren is like, where the fuck have you guys been? And she's genuinely been worried about them. There is a moment that got my attention where I really enjoyed this. Alex says, are we out of Pop-Tarts? There's tasty cakes on top of the fridge. My mom sent them. And later on, there's a mention of Alex. She's having like a butterscotch crimpet. I don't know. I think that when she's saying my mom sent them, it's supposed to be like in the mail or something, because having lived in Connecticut and then moving to Philly, I had never seen tasty cakes before. Like, we didn't have them in Connecticut. So I don't know if now we do have them. They've, exported more than they had. If I just never noticed them, I just noticed them everywhere once I was in Philly. But anyway, they're talking. Lauren wants to know, like, where do you think we should live next year? And Mercy says that she's thinking about doing a year or a semester abroad. And when Alex gets Mercy alone, and it's like, what are you talking about? She's like, look, if we just told Lauren that we were abroad, we wouldn't have to hide so much from her, and it would be a lot easier to deal with everything going on. And when Alex tries to say, well, we won't be dealing with, because I'm not in Lethe anymore, Mercy is basically like, come on, I can't just like go back to acting like I don't know about this stuff. And Alex thinks to herself, we don't get to choose, but I'm like, you do a little bit though, especially you, Alex. Like, you can still see the dead. So you're still in that mix, whether you're in Lethe or not. So this is when she gets the call from Alex from Dawes, and Dawes is telling her that the Praetor wants to meet with her, and he called her Virgil, and he called Dawes Oculus, and she's like, not sure, maybe this is something he wants you to come to do, some sort of like paperwork or ritual after, like, for us to be stripped of our offices. I don't know. At this point, Alex glances out the window, and the not Helly is sitting there, but so is Linus Reader. And Alex kind of has the beginnings of a panic attack. And Dawes has to talk her through 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, in order to get her to this is like a proven method of centering somebody in the present when they are beginning to fall into a panic attack. And Alex is aware it's what it is and sort of tries to argue with Dawes about it. And Dawes is like, I don't care if you know what I'm doing. Shut the fuck up and then do it. And it does help, Dawes tells her, look, it's not like it's not night. So he will be keeping to the shadows. He won't be able to hunt at least until dusk falls. And he won't be able to stay like outside of his nest for very long. He physically can't do it, which she doesn't add anything to explain why that is, or how much time he gets before he has to go back. But I am very curious about that. I would like some more info on it. So let's see. Add him to the list, Dawes. We get rid of the demons and we get rid of Reader too. It's not going to be easy. The things they know. Do you want to tell me what Blake said? There was a long pause. He was outside of my window this morning in the snow, whispering. So apparently Blake is telling her he was innocent and never hurt anybody, that his mom cries himself to sleep every night. And then eventually Blake said I killed him because I'm the kind of girl he would never bother to fuck. He said he could tell what I looked like down there, that I was ugly. And Alex says, God, that really does sound like Blake. And that makes total sense to me. Like, he is exactly the type of dude that would say that. That is just a perfect fucking, so gross. And also the assertion that he's like innocent and never hurt anybody. Did Alex ever tell Dawes about Blake's rape video book that he had? I'm very curious. I can't remember that conversation coming up. And I don't know if she didn't tell her because she feels like that's something kind of secret that happened to Mercy and it's not hers to share. But she could tell her without Mercy talking about Mercy's situation specifically. But anyway, it isn't true, Dawes. We have to keep saying it until we believe it. Is he there now? The loris bit him. It climbed right through the window and bit him on the cheek. He just started screaming, my face, my face. And they both start cracking up. So then we get a call from Turner. And he tells Alex he wants her to come down and see Ed Lampton's son. The son of the professor at the center of the murder. We apprehended him outside the apartment of one of his father's fellows. We put a protective detail on the other faculty involved. And he says this guy confessed, but something about this isn't right. And nobody agrees with me. And she's like, what about his alibi? And he said, well, it didn't, he had one, but it didn't hold up. And then he confessed. So Alex is like, all right, well, he doesn't ask me for my opinion often. And he's like explicitly asking me. So, all right, I'll go. So I'm going to need a ride to the jail. And Turner's like, yeah, that's not where he's at. And it turns out he's at the psych ward at Yale New Haven Hospital, which already Alex is thinking, I really don't want to go to a place like that. I have been there plenty of times myself. However, she also, like, the way this is sounding to me is that this guy has been forced to confess by somebody and it broke his brain. And there's something magical involved in it. And I think she is going to be able to tell that. Yeah, we'll have to see. So she goes through her classes and then she's heading over to the Preeters and she gets like jostled by somebody and she turns around and it's Svi and Eitan. And I did not see this coming at all. And she has to draw them off to the side to talk about what the fuck they're here for. And what it comes down to is Eitan is saying, you take care of Linus and I will forgive basically the debts you owe me, which she doesn't really owe him fucking anything at this point. He's just holding her mother over his head, but he's saying you will really be done. There will be no more jobs demanded of you or anything like that, which, that is all well and good to say, but I just genuinely don't know how to believe that. Like, he could just decide to threaten your mom and then boom, you're back in the same place, you know? So yeah, she's like considering whether or not she even needs to take this deal. And he says something about how this is a good market. I had business in this city. There's lots of young people, lots of pressure, everyone trying to have fun. That felt like a threat. Was Eitan going to push her to deal on campus? There had to be a line somewhere. There had to be an end to this. And yeah, I don't know, man. I can't decide if this is like, if he would really willingly let her go. She says, I take care of Rita, we're done, that's the deal. Eitan smiled and patted her shoulder. Yes. It's too easy. It's just too easy. I don't see it. And yeah, it ends with him saying, good girl. He wasn't right about that either. And that is the end of chapter 32. So very, very exciting section. Really, really liked this one. And this was a rare case where I was so busy over the weekend, I didn't get a chance to listen. Normally I will listen to the sections twice. I'll listen right after I'm done with my recordings because I desperately want to know what happens. And then I listen again on the day to refresh myself. But I didn't get a chance to listen the first time. And this is maybe one of the only times for this book series that I have only read once, but I got to record about it right after listening, which was pretty fun. I was just so like primed because of how unexpected everything went. I was like, I get to talk about it immediately. This is going to be great. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me. Appreciate you. Appreciate Joanna for commissioning this. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
an Unspoiled Network podcast.